I stood at the edge of the reception hall beneath the crystal chandeliers of the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco. My moss green dress was modest, nothing form-fitting, nothing flashy. I chose to stay near the wall where few people paid attention because I knew this day belonged to Emily, the perfect little sister the whole family worshipped. And me? I was just the useful shadow in the background. The wedding swallowed more than $180,000, from imported orchid gardens to a live band flown in from Seattle. I had paid the venue deposit, fronted the decor costs, and even handled their marriage license paperwork while my sister posed for bridal photos in Paris. Naturally, in my parents' speech, Walter and Patricia, the name Ruby wasn't mentioned once. I was sipping lemonade when my mother approached. Her silver dress grazed the Italian marble tiles, and her eyes scanned every strand of my hair. "Ruby, are you free? Your father and I need a quick word." Her voice was sweet enough to cut skin. I followed her down the corridor leading to the glass garden. My father was already waiting, his face stern, like he was preparing for a board meeting. She began with a stream of praise. "Emily truly found a man worthy of her. Your father and I see this as a turning point for our family, and—" She glanced at me. "Perhaps it's time you gave a little too." I said nothing. Then she dropped it. "Your penthouse, it's spacious, fully furnished. You're always traveling for work. Wouldn't it be perfect if Emily and Andrew started their new life there?" Each word cut like a blade to the ear. "You mean gift them the apartment as a wedding present?" I asked, keeping my voice even. "Not gift. Don't think of it that way. It's sharing. It's what an older sister does." I turned to my father. He said nothing, just stared into the koi pond like I wasn't even there. I took a deep breath. "The answer is no. That home is my work, my effort. I'm not giving it to anyone." The air froze in a single breath. My mother's face twisted. Through clenched teeth, she hissed, "You're ungrateful. We raised you all these years, and now when we ask for one small thing, you act like we're robbing you." I didn't respond. And in that very moment, she raised her hand. Smack! Her palm landed hard across my cheek, colder and harsher than any word she'd spoken. My head tilted, but I didn't fall. Some guests nearby fell silent. The music stopped altogether. No one came over. No one said a word. Emily turned her back, pretending to adjust her veil. My father muttered coldly, "You're making this about you. It's not about you." I stood up straight, eyes fixed. "Of course it's not. It never has been." I turned and walked away. My heels struck the marble floor like punctuation marks, echoing with finality. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just smiled. Not because I was okay, but because I had just woken up. I left the Fairmont Hotel just as a light rain began to fall. The streets of San Francisco shimmered with reflections, but inside me was only a hollow silence, stretching out like an echo in an empty room. My left cheek still burned, but what haunted me more was the look in Emily's eyes when she turned away. Cold, like the surface of Lake Tahoe in winter. It wasn't that she didn't know. It was that she chose their side. When I got back to the penthouse on the 38th floor, I didn't turn on the lights. I walked straight into my office, shrugged off my coat, tossed my bag onto the leather chair, then knelt down in front of the third drawer of the oak cabinet. Inside, buried under company files, consulting contracts, and a few unpublished design drafts, was a thick ivory envelope with gold-stitched trim. I pulled it out slowly, like touching something sacred. Inside was the notarized copy of my grandmother's will. Helen Lane, the only woman who had ever looked at me with pride instead of expectation or judgment. She passed away 3 years ago due to complications from diabetes. I was there on her last day. My mother? She was on a cruise in the Bahamas with Emily. The will had yellowed slightly, but her signature remained crisp and steady, just like she was. One line, bold and unwavering, sat in the center of the page. Full ownership of the property at 1900 Jackson Street, floor 38, San Francisco, including the private rooftop and the Wells Fargo savings account ending in 2413, shall belong to my only granddaughter, Ruby Lane, who never asked but always showed up. I remembered the day she signed it. It was a Sunday. I had taken her out for waffles at a little cafe on Fillmore Street. We came back home, sat by the window, looking down at the city. She turned to me and said something I'll never forget. You don't have to prove your worth to anyone, especially not to those who never saw who you really are. I sank to the floor, still gripping the will. The pain inside me wasn't from the slap. It was from knowing that the very people who raised me saw me only as a tool, a sacrificial piece to keep the illusion of a perfect family intact. I opened the wall safe behind the bookshelf. Inside were the original will, the savings book, and the deed to the penthouse, all in my name, completed with Grandma's help when I was 28. She once told me, "You don't need anyone's permission to start your own life." Resting on top of the safe was a hand-stitched handkerchief with my name embroidered on it. A tiny line below read, "For the day they forget who you are." I held it to my chest. She always knew. She always saw what they ignored. My phone buzzed. A message from my personal attorney, Margot Reese. "Received the transfer documents from Mrs. Helen. Still have the certified copy. Do you want me to act?" I replied simply, "Not yet, but soon." I stood and walked out to the balcony, gazing down at the city. Headlights drew pale lines across Van Ness Avenue. People below were beginning their ordinary evening. As for me, I was about to begin a battle they didn't know they started. Back inside, I flipped on the lights. The penthouse glowed bright, and in the reflection of the glass door, I saw a woman who no longer lived in submission. I turned on the printer. One by one, copies of the will, contracts, and bank statements rolled out, formal, precise, undeniable. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Not because I couldn't sleep, but because something in the air felt off, like stepping into a room someone else had already been in. When I went to make coffee in the kitchen, the machine was still warm. The strange part, I hadn't touched it the night before. I set my mug down and walked straight to the security panel by the front door. The screen showed activity logs from the past 48 hours. I scrolled to around 2:11 a.m. Secondary key, valid access, validator 2, floor 38. I froze. I had only ever issued one secondary key, and that was nearly 5 years ago, when Emily temporarily moved in after a breakup with her ex. She had pleaded with me back then, teary-eyed. "I just need a spare key in case you're not home." I'd forgotten about it. Emily hadn't. I immediately checked the drawer where I kept the spare keys. The elevator fob was still there, but the mailbox key was missing. I didn't call. I didn't ask questions. I got dressed and headed to my office on the 11th floor of the Park and Evans building. I needed space to think. Around noon, my phone buzzed. A message from Monica, a former colleague and the only friend who still kept in touch with Emily. "Have you seen Emily's close friends story? I think you need to." Attached was a screenshot from Instagram. I opened it. It showed the main lobby of my building, white marble columns, the large canvas painting behind the front desk. The angle was from the left side, accessible only to residents with a key. Caption underneath, "New beginnings, welcome to our home, wifey life," with a heart emoji, and she had tagged Andrew. I didn't feel anger, not even confusion, just clarity. For the first time in years, I saw Emily without a mask. She wasn't begging, she wasn't charming. She had acted as if I no longer existed. I returned to the security camera system inside the unit. I filtered footage between 2 and 3 a.m. Eastern balcony feed, a short figure in a white hoodie, unlocking the door from outside, stepping in silently. No lights. Straight down the hallway. No forced entry, no damage, just walked right in. I downloaded the entire clip to an external hard drive along with snapshots of the access log. Then I picked up my phone and called the building's management office. I asked for Deborah, the resident services manager. "Hi, this is Ruby Lane. I need to confirm. Was there a request to update the resident list for Unit 3802? I heard her flipping through papers and typing. "Oh yes, there was. Yesterday, we received a request to add Emily Rutherford to the official resident file, with confirmation of a permanent move-in. It included a digital signature under your name. I swallowed slowly. I never signed that. Send me the document immediately and reverse every change. No one is allowed access to my unit without me present. Yes, ma'am. I'll take care of it right away. After the call, I checked my inbox. The attached file was a forged authorization document with an e-signature that matched mine about 90%. But I knew it wasn't mine, and I knew exactly who orchestrated it. Emily hadn't waited for my permission. She had already decided the place was hers. I went back to my desk and opened the bottom drawer, where I kept a file labeled contingency property. Inside, copies of the deed, notarized confirmations from my attorney, and a signed affidavit securing the property in the event of inheritance disputes. I attached every piece of evidence I'd collected to an email addressed to Margot Reese, my personal lawyer. The subject line was short: urgent, unauthorized entry, request immediate response. I hit send. I sat frozen in front of my laptop long after hitting send. The apartment was suffocatingly quiet, just the soft hum of the A/C in the background. Then I stood up, slipped into a charcoal business suit, tied my hair into a clean high ponytail, and headed straight down to the front desk. When I arrived, Alan, the morning shift security guard, was monitoring the cameras. He stood up as soon as he saw me. "Good morning, Miss Ruby. Is there something I can help you with?" I placed a folder on the counter. Or Unit 3802 changed. Fobs, keypad, biometric scanners, everything. And I don't want anyone added to the resident registry without my written consent, no exceptions. Alan blinked in surprise. "Yes, ma'am, I understand, but to do that, we'll need to go through management and coordinate with the security maintenance team. And I also need the physical locks changed. I'm not waiting another minute." An hour later, 2 technicians from building maintenance were at my apartment door. I watched them closely as they removed the hardware, installed new locks, reset the fingerprint and facial recognition systems. As they were wrapping up, I added, "Cancel all secondary keys, including any issued before 2020, and I want real-time alerts anytime someone tries to swipe an invalid fob." "I'll reprogram that right away, Ms. Lane." That same afternoon, I went to the office of Margot Reese, the attorney who had represented my grandmother for the last 15 years of her life. The firm was located in an old building near the Civic Center, discreet but effective, just like the kind of people my grandmother trusted. Margot greeted me in a light gray blazer, sharp eyes behind rimless glasses. "I read your email. The evidence you sent is solid. I'll draft a cease and desist notice today." I pulled from my bag a notarized copy of the will, property ownership documents, elevator access logs, screenshots of the Instagram story, and camera footage showing my sister sneaking in during the early morning hours. Margot organized them neatly, then nodded. "Perfect. You've got more than enough to take legal action if needed. But first, we'll send a formal cease and desist. That should get the point across." Less than 2 hours later, I received a scanned copy of the letter in my inbox. The subject line was bolded. "Cease and desist. From Ruby Lane." I read it carefully. "Isolde Rutherford is hereby instructed to immediately cease any and all access, use of, or claims of ownership over Unit 3802 in accordance with applicable laws pertaining to private property, personal privacy, and signature forgery. Any further violations will result in civil litigation, claims for damages, and notification to the Residence Board and Internal Security Force." Sign the original. Margot slipped it into a cream envelope, sealed it with a stamp, and called her assistant. "Send this via priority courier. I want it in her hands by the end of the day." As I was leaving, Margot looked up. "Ruby, do you think your sister will react?" I looked her straight in the eye. "Steve won't stay quiet, but this time, neither will I." By the time I got home, the sky was darkening. The city lights reflected off the balcony glass, giving the apartment the illusion of peaceful stillness. But I knew better. This was just the calm before the storm. I opened my laptop, launched the smart home management app. The screen displayed 0 unauthorized access attempts in the past 6 hours. Good. But I wasn't letting my guard down. I enabled continuous recording, set up automatic cloud backups, and created an emergency response file, including a list of banned individuals. That night, I didn't sleep much, but I wasn't tired. I felt alert. For the first time in years, I was finally standing up for what was mine. 3 days after the cease and desist letter was sent, I received a cream-colored envelope from the law office of Davenport and Reed. It looked professional, expensive, and calculated. The sender was Henry Brooks, my mother's younger brother, a man who calls himself a strategic real estate consultant, but is in reality a failed broker always trying to wedge himself into messy inheritance cases. I opened the envelope in the dead silence of my apartment, as if I already knew what was waiting inside. Inside was a supplemental will, allegedly signed by Mrs. Helen Lane, 6 months before her passing. It clearly stated, I, Helen Lane, being of sound mind, hereby leave ownership of apartment 3802 and all related assets to my granddaughter Emily Rutherford, who remained by my side in my final days. Just below was a trembling ink signature, eerily similar to my grandmother's real one. If I didn't already have the notarized original locked in my safe, I might have hesitated. But no, my grandmother never referred to Emily as someone close, and she definitely didn't leave her the apartment. I picked up the phone and called Margot Reese. They sent a fake document? Sent from Henry Brooks's personal attorney. Worse than I thought, Margot replied. I'll verify with the notary office and court records. But Ruby, don't be surprised if they escalate. Margot was right. Not even 24 hours later, I was summoned to the resident management office of the building. The board president, Richard Hall, a man in his 60s with a calm appearance but constantly evaluating eyes, was waiting in a small ground floor meeting room. Beside him sat Emily. She wore a white blazer, held a navy folder, and her face was a strange blend of fake concern and quiet triumph. Ms. Lane, Mr. Hall began, we've received several complaints concerning apartment 3802. There are allegations that you've installed an unauthorized security system, violated the pet regulations, and exhibited threatening behavior toward residents. I didn't react immediately. I simply looked at Mr. Hall, then turned to Emily. And who filed the complaint? Multiple sources, but the official complaint is from Miss Rutherford. I opened my bag and pulled out a thick folder, neatly indexed. Then I have materials I need to present as well. I opened my tablet and connected it to the wall-mount TV screen. The first slide appeared, an image of Emily standing in the hallway on the 38th floor at 2:13 a.m., holding a key, unlocking the door without permission. Second slide, elevator access log showing use of a revoked fob ID from back in 2019. Third slide, a screenshot of Emily's Instagram story captioned, Welcome to our home. Fourth slide, the original notarized will stamped and certified by Margot's office. Final slide, a handwriting analysis comparing my grandmother's real signature with the forged one on their submitted will. The room went dead silent. Emily gripped her folder tightly. Her lips twitched. This doesn't prove anything, she finally said. I'm just trying to seek justice for the family. I smiled. Justice doesn't come from lockpicking and forged signatures. Mr. Hall cleared his throat and glanced over the stack of documents in front of him. I'll need time to review everything, but I must admit, Ms. Lane's documentation is clear and valid. We cannot act based on unfounded accusations. Emily jumped out of her chair and pushed through the door, her heels echoing loudly down the hallway. I didn't look back. I simply turned around, carefully collecting and placing each document back into my black folder. As I stood up, Mr. Hall called out, Miss Lane, if you ever consider joining the building board, we gladly welcome someone like you. I gave a slight nod. I don't enjoy conflict, Mr. Hall, but I believe deeply in defending boundaries. Walking out of the meeting room, I didn't feel like I'd won. I just felt like the truth had been put back where it belonged. 2 days after the meeting at the building's management office, I received an email from a name I never expected to resurface: Maxine Sullivan, the daughter of my maternal uncle, a woman who'd always stayed silent at family gatherings, quietly sipping tea in the corner, observing more than speaking. The subject line was simple: "You need to hear this." Inside, there was no long message, just a single M4A audio file, and one line: "They thought I wasn't listening, but I heard every word." I put on my headphones and played the file. The beginning was faint clinking of glasses and muffled laughter. Then my mother's voice rang out, clear, steady. "Ruby won't fight back. She's always afraid of hurting the family." Emily chimed in, half joking, half mocking. "She's such a softie. Just push a little and she'll hand over the penthouse keys like it's her duty." Then another voice, Aunt Colleen, who always claimed I was too distant. "Just guilt her into thinking she's ruining her sister's happiness. She'll back off on her own. That girl's always starved for love." Then laughter, light, indifferent, as if they weren't talking about a real person, but just a tool in their family game. I replayed it twice. Each time, my chest tightened, not out of pain, but out of certainty. I was right, this wasn't about love. It was all strategy. 3 days later came the wedding celebration at my uncle's home in Santa Clara. A big, extended family gathering, cousins, aunts, uncles, even old friends from high school. I hadn't planned on going, but after that recording, I knew I had to. I arrived on time: black square neck dress, hair tied neatly in a bun, no flashy jewelry, no heavy makeup. I wasn't there to impress. I was there with the truth. The house buzzed with laughter, clinking glasses, and the smell of fresh pastries. As I stepped in, a few heads turned. My mother stood by the wine table, chatting, her smile faltering when she saw me. Emily feigned surprise. "You came. We thought you were still sulking in the penthouse." I said nothing. I walked to the center table where the 3-tiered cake stood next to a Bluetooth speaker. I opened my purse, pulled out my phone, and hit play on the audio. No intro, no warning. Their voices filled the room. Every word, every mocking tone, echoing through the now silent gathering. Glasses froze mid-air, forks stopped clinking. The only sound was the playback of what they never thought would be heard again. When the recording ended, I didn't speak. I simply looked at my mother, Emily, Aunt Colleen. No one said a word. Some relatives averted their eyes. Others stood stiff, lips pressed tight. Finally, my uncle spoke. "Did you all really plot that behind Ruby's back?" "It was just a joke," Emily stammered, her pitch unnaturally high. "It sounded more like a scheme than a joke," came a voice from the corner. It was Cousin Dana, once Emily's closest friend in high school. My mother stepped forward, voice trembling. "Ruby, you have to understand. We were just trying to keep the family together. It was all said under pressure." I looked at her, not with anger, not with tears, just calmly said, "Pressure doesn't create betrayal, choice does." And I turned and walked out of that crowded room, leaving behind a silence that clung like dust. No one followed. No one called my name. And I knew, for the first time in my life, they were forced to hear their own voices and had no way to deny them. Thursday evening, while I was trimming the lavender pots on my balcony, the doorbell rang. The camera screen lit up with the name: Andrew Lancaster. Emily's newlywed husband. I hesitated for a second, then opened the door. Andrew wore a slightly wrinkled white dress shirt under a thin gray coat, rain-speckled. His face no longer carried the confident polish from the wedding day. It looked worn, uneven. In his hands was a brown leather folder, edges frayed. I didn't invite him in, but he stepped in slowly, like he had nowhere else to go. "I know I have no right to be here," he began, placing the folder on the table. "But you need to see this." I stood still, silent. He opened the folder. Inside were printed messages, texts between my mother, Aunt Colleen, and Emily, spanning 6 months leading up to the wedding. There was no vagueness, no ambiguity. "Don't give her time to react, just push the wedding forward." Make her believe that if she doesn't give Emily the apartment, the wedding will collapse. Andrew already thinks that property belongs to Emily. Let it stay that way. I turned to the next page. The prenup agreement. Bolded clause highlighted in yellow. Premarital assets include the condominium located at 1900 Jackson Street, 38th floor, San Francisco, valued by the bride's family at $3.2 million. I looked up at Andrew. He nodded, eyes downcast. I believed them. Believed you knew. Emily said you didn't want to interfere with her new life, that you'd gifted the apartment as a wedding present. He exhaled, voice gravelly. I signed off on it, thought it was symbolic. Turns out I was just a tool. I gripped the velvet armrest under the dining table. The feeling wasn't rage. It was hollow. The kind of hollow you feel when something you warned yourself about finally happens. Why are you bringing this to me? Andrew straightened his back, met my gaze. Because you deserve to know, and because I can't pretend any more. Ever since that gathering, I know they won't stop. He slid a small USB drive across the table. This is a recording of their conversation after you left the party. They laughed about you playing the first recording and said if you didn't volunteer, they'd find a way to have you committed, claim you were unstable. I froze. I'd heard that kind of threat before. From my mother, when I moved out at 25. Back then, she said, people who hide everything and isolate like you, that's a red flag. Andrew looked at me. I want nothing to do with this anymore. I'll testify if you need me to. I know this might go legal. I'm not running. I nodded slightly. You'll lose a lot by stepping up. I've already lost some of my dignity. All I want now is to keep what's left of my conscience. I walked into my office, returned with a folder labeled Margot Reese, my attorney. I set it on the table. I've filed for a temporary injunction on property transfer. If they try to use the prenup to shift ownership, they'll be blocked. I paused for a beat. And if you're serious about testifying, my lawyer will reach out. Andrew nodded. No apologies, no justifications, just, I always thought you were strong. I just didn't realize how scared of you they actually are. I walked him to the door without another word. When it closed, I returned to the table, took the USB, and plugged it into my laptop. Voices echoed, Emily's first. She's got no one left in her corner. Someone like Ruby, when isolated, is the easiest to control. I sat there for a long time. No tears, no trembling, just the quiet certainty that I finally had the last piece of the puzzle. The phone rang at 9:17 p.m., just as I was organizing the sealed documents to send to Margot's law office. The screen lit up with one name, Mom. I stared at it for a few seconds, then set the phone down. But it rang again, then a third time, before going silent. A minute later, the voicemail clicked on. I hadn't planned to listen, but my hand moved instinctively, tapping play. My mother's voice came through, unusually soft. Ruby, I know things have been a little tense lately, but we're family, sweetheart. The apartment is just a place. It's not worth hurting everyone over. She paused, then sighed. Emily's just trying to build her new life. I know you're strong, but strong doesn't mean cold. Come have dinner with us this Sunday. Nobody wants things to go this far. I stopped the recording before it ended. Sat back in the chair, fingers laced together, chest feeling oddly hollow. But this time, there was no wavering, no guilt, no urge to explain myself. I realized it wasn't an apology. It was a familiar loop, a kind of manipulation dressed in floral prints and vanilla-scented warmth. I grabbed my coat and left the apartment. My car turned north, down quiet asphalt roads glowing under soft streetlight. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. But I knew exactly the place. Glenview Ridge Park, where my grandmother used to take me on Saturday afternoons, when she still had the strength to climb the hill in old New Balance sneakers and with her wooden cane. I parked at the bottom and followed the worn stone steps to the grassy overlook. No one else was there. Just the wind and the scattered glow of the city below, like a silent, shimmering constellation. I sat on the stone bench where Grandma always rested, pulled from my coat pocket a weathered letter, handwritten, edges curled, script soft and round. My Ruby, if one day the world gets too loud, go find the quiet. Not to hide, but to hear yourself better. I know you always do the right thing, even if no one claps for it. You've never been broken, just never praised for staying whole. That's their blindness, not your fault. They may call you distant, but you've always been present. In silence, in steadiness, and to me, that's enough. I folded the letter gently, resting it in my lap. One tear slipped onto my hand, not out of sorrow, but from finally seeing myself clearly. I no longer needed my mother to admit she was wrong. I didn't need Emily to apologize. I didn't need their approval. Because at last I wasn't living to be seen, I was living to see myself. I left the park late into the night. On the way home, I stopped at a familiar little bakery and bought the cinnamon pastry my grandmother used to love, the one no one else in the family ever remembered. Back home, I took Grandma's old handkerchief down from its picture frame, folded it carefully, and placed it on the desk, beside the property deed, the original will, and the USB drive holding their real words. I turned on my phone, opened the contacts, tapped Mom, scrolled down and pressed block caller. No sigh, no hesitation, just one quiet act, final and firm. I wasn't burning bridges, but I stopped walking toward a house that never had space for me. That night, I slept better than I had in years. No dreams, no memories knocking, just soft darkness, and a gentle kind of peace. And the next morning, for the first time in my life, when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the daughter who was never enough. I saw a free woman. Ruby's story reminds us that sometimes the deepest wounds don't come from strangers, but from the people we love most. And yet it's also from those very places that we learn how to rise, set boundaries, and protect our worth. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and walking away isn't failure. It's a brave act of preserving peace. No one has the right to take your kindness for granted, and silence is no longer weakness when you know you deserve to live in alignment with your true value. What do you think about Ruby's choice? Would you have the courage to do the same in her situation? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful emotional stories about family.